Look at your own body for a second. You have no claws. Your fingernails would lose a fight with a cardboard box. You have no fangs, no armor, no venom, and no protective fur. You cannot outrun a wolf, outclimb a leopard, or outwrestle almost any large animal on Earth. If you were dropped naked into the African savanna right now, you would be one of the least physically dangerous large animals in the entire landscape. And yet, somehow, your ancestors hunted horses, rhinos, elephants, animals that outweighed them by 1,000 kilograms and could kill them in a single moment. So how did the weakest large ape on the planet become its most dangerous hunter? The answer is the weapon. And the story of the very first weapon is far older, far stranger, and far more sophisticated than almost anyone expects. Let's start by throwing out the picture in your head. When most people imagine the first weapon, they see a caveman swinging a wooden club or clutching a jagged rock, snarling at an enemy. Crude, angry, simple. That image is wrong in almost every way. And the biggest thing it gets wrong is the reason weapons existed at all. The first weapons were not invented for war. They were not made to fight other humans. They were invented out of desperation, by a creature that was losing. Every weapon our ancestors ever made was an answer to one brutal problem. How does something soft, slow, and clawless kill something enormous? And the very first solution was so simple that most people don't even count it as a weapon. It was a rock. Long before anything was carved or shaped, our ancestors picked up stones and threw them. And this matters far more than it sounds, because here is a fact that surprises almost everyone. Humans are the only animal on Earth that can throw with real speed and accuracy. A chimpanzee is several times stronger than you, but a chimp can only throw at around 30 kilometers an hour and barely aim it. A human child can throw faster than the strongest chimp alive. Researchers at Harvard studying the mechanics of throwing found that our shoulders, arms, and torsos are built like a slingshot. When you wind up to throw, you stretch elastic energy across your shoulder and store it there, then release it all at once. That anatomy appears around 2 million years ago in Homo erectus. Think about what that meant. For the first time in the history of life on this planet, an animal could hurt something without touching it. A creature with no claws had invented distance, but rocks only take you so far. To bring down big game, our ancestors needed something better. And what they built next is genuinely astonishing. In 1994, in an open coal mine near the town of Schöningen in Germany, archaeologist Hartmut Thieme and his team began pulling something extraordinary out of the ground. Buried in waterlogged soil that had preserved wood for hundreds of thousands of years, they found spears, not fragments. Complete, finished, beautifully made wooden spears. 10 of them. They are somewhere between roughly 200,000 and 400,000 years old, and they are the oldest complete hunting weapons ever discovered. And these are not sharpened sticks. Each one was carved from the trunk of a spruce tree, standing between about 6 and 7.5 feet long. Whoever made them chose the hardest, densest part of the wood. They stripped the branches. They shaved the shafts smooth. And most impressively of all, they carved them so that the thickest, heaviest point sat about 1/3 of the way along, near the front, exactly the same balance point used in a modern Olympic javelin. Let that land for a moment. Someone hundreds of thousands of years ago, with no writing, no schools, and no metal tools, worked out the aerodynamics of a flying javelin. They understood weight distribution. They understood balance. They tested, adjusted, and passed that knowledge on. And we know exactly what they were for, because of what was lying next to them. The remains of around 20 butchered horses. This was not a lone caveman poking at a rabbit. This was a coordinated hunting operation on a lakeshore against powerful animals using engineered weapons and a plan. And the people who did it may not even have been our species. They were most likely Homo heidelbergensis, or early Neanderthals. England has its own piece of this story. Back in 1911, at Clacton-on-Sea, someone found the broken tip of a wooden spear made from yew, about 15 inches long and over 400,000 years old. For decades it was a lonely mystery, a single object nobody could quite explain. Then Schöningen was discovered, and suddenly the Clacton spear made sense. These weapons weren't rare accidents. Ancient humans were making them regularly. But wood only survives in very rare conditions, which means almost every ancient wooden weapon has rotted away and vanished forever. To find something older, you have to look at what does survive: stone. And that takes us to South Africa, to a site called Kathupan 1. Stone points were dug up there decades ago, but it wasn't until 2012 that a team led by Jane Wilkins, then at the University of Toronto, published a study in the journal Science that changed the timeline completely. Their problem was this: how do you prove that a stone point was a spear tip and not just a handheld cutting tool? Their solution was wonderfully direct. They built a calibrated crossbow, fired replica stone points into an animal carcass at controlled speed, and then compared the damage patterns to the ancient points. The match was clear. The ancient points showed the exact kind of impact fractures you only get when something slams into a target at high speed, and wear near the base consistent with being bound to a shaft. Those points are around 500,000 years old. That pushed stone-tipped weapons back by 200,000 years in a single study. And the timing is remarkable, because 500,000 years ago is before Neanderthals and modern humans split apart. Which means this technology wasn't invented twice, and it wasn't copied from one group to another. It was already there, in our shared ancestor, before either of us existed. We didn't inherit weapons from our own species. We inherited them from a grandparent species that both of us descend from. And there's a haunting piece of physical proof from around the same time. At Boxgrove in England, archaeologists found the fossilized shoulder blade of a rhinoceros with a hole punched clean through it. A projectile wound, 500,000 years old. Somewhere in that landscape, a creature that was not yet human threw something hard enough to pierce a rhino. Now, attaching a stone point to a wooden shaft sounds simple. It absolutely is not. Think about what it actually requires. You have to find the right stone and understand how it fractures. You have to strike it precisely to shape a point. You have to find the right wood and cut a slot in it. Then you need adhesive, often made by heating birch bark or tree resin into glue, a process that requires controlled temperature. Then you bind it with plant fiber or animal sinew, and you let it set. That is a multi-day project with several separate steps, each one useless on its own. To make it, you have to hold the entire finished object in your mind before it exists, and work backward. That is called planning depth, and it is one of the clearest signals of a mind that thinks like ours. The first weapon wasn't just a tool, it was proof of imagination. And once that idea existed, it never stopped evolving. Later came the spear thrower, a carved hook that acts as an extension of your arm and roughly doubles the power and range of a throw. Then the bow, and the shape of human life changed with each one, because every step meant killing from further away, with less risk to yourself. We can even see the moment a weapon hit its target, frozen in stone. At a site called el Tlel in Syria, archaeologists found a broken stone point still embedded in the vertebra of a wild ass, roughly 50,000 years old. A single hunt, one strike, preserved for 500 centuries. So what was the first weapon, really? If you want a single object, the honest answer is a sharpened stick and a thrown rock, so old that the wood has rotted from every site we will ever dig. But the truer answer is stranger than that. The first weapon was never really the spear at all. It was the ability to imagine one. Because the spear only works if you can picture, in your mind, an object that does not yet exist. A stone that becomes a point, a tree that becomes a shaft, sap that becomes glue. And then you have to keep that vision alive for days while you build it and teach it to your children so the knowledge outlives you. Every predator on Earth is born with its weapons already attached. Claws, fangs, venom, speed. They arrive complete. We are the only animal that has to build them, and we build them out of thought. That is why a weak, slow, clawless ape ended up at the top of the food chain. Not because we were strong, because we could hold the future in our heads, then reach out and make it real. 500,000 years ago, someone sat by a lake, shaping a piece of spruce into a perfect balanced javelin for a hunt that had not happened yet. Everything humans have ever built since, every tool, every machine, every city, came from that same strange ability. We didn't survive because we invented the weapon. We survived because we could imagine it first.